Last time, on Talora Tales. Our party leave Messidore heading northwest across the Rune-Thosi plains on their way to a town called Yevaloon, where supposedly a harassing cluster of kobolds has been poking and prodding at the populace. Going further and further, I can't speak, going further and further up the river that trickles down the life valley of the elven people, our party stumble upon a nomadic elf. I guess dispatching's not the right term, but laying to rest his partner kind of on a lonely hillside. From this interaction, Quinn is gifted a wind whistle, which is a tool that the nomadic people use quite often to help cover their tracks as they move about the glade. Later on, there's a very small scuffle where the party interact with a passing group of goblinoid and orc hunters, tracking a cattle that they had injured and were probably going to secure at some point in the near future. During this interaction, a singular orc is picked off, or I guess lured away, for our party to dispose of, continuing ever onward towards their destination. Arriving at Yevaloon, our party interact with the landlord or the village elder, whatever title you want to bestow upon him, and gained a little bit of insight on the current events that are taking place in the small settlement. The main points of interest is there's a western homestead, the farthest western homestead from the town, that now holds a recent widow, having lost her husband and son, who seems to be making her isolated stand against the kobolds and refusing to return back to town where it is relatively safer. Her life is still her own thanks to the singular town guard that the town did have, giving his life to save her, which leaves Ava, a young elven girl, orphaned in the town and somewhat bitter of the recent events. The party go around and try and suss out a little bit more information, which leads to Thomas and Brainoon having a conversation with Ava. From this conversation, there's a little bit of mind manipulation, or reading, I guess I should say, where Thomas is given the first sight of this large draconic creature that seems to be a strange mesh of a drake guard or a hound made of dragon hide or some strange mixture of the sort. It has 6 legs, stands perhaps 20 feet tall, but has no tail, which leads the party to question their probability of success, I guess at the very least, as they all join together on the morning of the 5th in the tavern that they have been residing in, discussing what the next steps might be. During this discussion, Ava comes barging into the tavern, throws a kobold corpse down onto the ground, and asserts that she has now struck down 3 of the fiendish creatures. So, companions, heroes, as you are, interrupted during your little gathering. I guess, what is your interaction to this disturbance?
What kind of... So he was shot, the kobold.
There is an arrow through his neck. Actually, give me a quick insight check, Quinn, because I kind of forgot to mention this last time.
All right, I got a total of 21.
Okay. Kind of first looking at the corpse and then maybe having that sight spurring on this little investigation in your mind. As you look Ayla up and down, who she's kind of somewhat covered in a bit of dirt and grime, which I guess indicates that she's been on quite the adventure throughout the night. The bow that she holds, which she sometimes will kind of like strap across her chest in the kind of standard adventuring, like sling over position, it is taller than she is, which I think was previously mentioned, but this is like a full-grown adult male's like war bow. This is a large weapon, to the point that it's unlikely that Ava can actually wield it and use it. So even though the kobold has an arrow through its neck, it's likely that it was not from the bow.
I guess I'll kind of step forward, and if I remember correctly, like we've gotten the download now.
Mm-hmm.
I say we, I guess that would be me and Sven.
Yeah.
have gotten the download. So, I'll step over to the corpse and kind of admire the handiwork and say, looks like a clean kill.
She kind of like
Damn.
looks up at you and like looks down at the corpse and then like gives you a more, I guess, examining glance. And you would see that her eyes kind of like fixate on your ears, even if you have them somewhat hidden or obscured. She's
No, I have 'em
very,
out.
okay, yeah, like attuned to them. And she'd eventually meet your eyes and go, "You're a half-breed. That's peculiar."
It's I don't think it's peculiar. The elves are a loving people.
Hmm.
Well, then maybe I should meet more elves.
Let's make that a 10th session. What do you think, Nathan?
As Ava kind of like leans around you to glance over at Sven, who she has not seen yet, there's almost a look of, I don't want to say like guilt, but maybe like shyness or wariness spotting a dragonkind. There's clearly some sort of presumption in her mind that is very clear across her face, but she kind of almost like uses your body to stand back up straight and kind of hide herself from Sven. You're how old are you? Are you an adult?
I am an adult, and
Fabulous.
is that your father's bow?
Kind of glances down at it and looks back up. Yes.
I'll tell you what. Purely for the expediency of killing kobolds, when it be necessary, why don't you borrow this? And I'll hold out my short bow and say, and put that somewhere safe, because you're going to want it later.
I can shoot this.
I didn't say you couldn't, but you'll be more accurate with this.
Give me a persuasion check.
That is a 13.
Okay. She doesn't immediately answer. I'm assuming you're holding the short bow out to her.
Yeah, I'm offering it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she kind of like reaches out and grabs it, looks it over a little bit, like, this isn't a kid's bow, right?
No, it's my bow. I shoot things with that bow.
How old are you?
I'm an adult. You're awfully
Hmm.
fixated on age.
Well, the first one I met, and then she kind of like leans over to catch Thomas. It's like, he's a fucking child.
Let's not throw those kinds of stones, shall we? Let's just focus on the task at hand.
What's your name?
Call me Quinn.
Okay, Quinn. Then she kind of like looks to make sure there's no one quite nearby. The bartender at this point is kind of come out from his little, I guess, like cubby hole where he sleeps during the night, kind of like rubbing the sleep out of his eye as he catches the scene. And there's just this, fucking Ava, goddamn. And then he like, kind of saunters over to the bar. Ava would kind of like lean up a little bit and like gesture for you to lean over, like, Quinn, can you help me get the arrow out? I can't get it out.
Oh yeah, sometimes there's a trick to it. And I'll retrieve the arrow, actually push it further through, and then grab the other side and pull it the rest of the way through.
Yeah, as you manhandle this fresh kobold corpse. It's very limp, kind of just starting to get the stiffness, as it had probably taken Ava a little bit of time to actually drag this into town. You like kind of cleanly pull the arrow through with the kind of black, dark maroon blood kind of like pulsing out of the open wound as you fully dislodge the projectile and I guess hand it back to her.
Yeah. What is there anything special about the arrow?
At first glance, no. It just looks like some sort of, standard handcrafted arrow that's probably made relatively recently.
Okay. Not like a dragon killing.
The
Super
arrow
arrow.
of dragon slaying passed down. But she would, I guess now wielding your short bow with no real place to put it, just kind of has it in her hand, and the arrow that you've now given back would look over at the group and kind of, I guess, wait to see what is about to happen.
Yeah, this entire time, Braynoon's just been sitting at the table, like rubbing at his temples, just not looking at the situation. Thomas and Sven would probably see the telltale signs of him being frustrated on his face, but he's just holding his tongue at the moment.
And Thomas would completely miss the frustration and just, Brandon, and this is great. I mean, we have an addition to our party. We could be the Ember Five if she sticks around. But you're coming with us, right, Ava?
Ava kind of leans over to see Thomas. Is like, yeah, us kids got to stick together.
The rubbing the temples just gets more pronounced. I will stand up, walk over the kobold, pick it up, and I'm going to walk outside because I don't want a dead kobold corpse sitting where I would typically be eating a meal. And so I'm just going to find a place outside that is out of what is likely to be a common path. I want to stash it somewhere, get some fresh air, just thinking through how to handle this situation.
As you go to pick it up and kind of pass by Ava, she would kind of like look over you like, make sure you put it where Elwok can't see it. He's a bit of a prick.
I just grunt, like not a grunt of confirmation, not a grunt of just a grunt, and walk out the door.
Sven's like, yes, we should probably clean this up too. And Thomas, help me prestidigitate this clean. Oh, yeah, okay, no problem. We can do that. And then the two of them will just get that all tidied up.
As you are working on cleaning the area, Ava would kind of almost look back to Quinn being the de facto, I guess, individual she's kind of attached to. Speaking of Elwok, we should probably leave town. He's not going to be too happy about what I did.
Why is that?
Well, I'm not supposed to be hunting these things, and now I've brought one into the town. He won't be pleased.
Well, what's wrong with hunting them? That's why we're here. So, it's not illegal to kill kobolds, is it, Braynon?
I'm outside.
Yeah.
I'm not there right now.
Quinn?
If it is, it's news to me.
He's just cranky. He doesn't want me doing what I do best.
Well, yeah. I'm ready to go.
Let's go. She kind of starts going out the door.
Yeah, I'll go with her.
Thomas, Sven, and Braynoon, what are your directions?
Yeah, I'll follow with. We'll both follow out.
Okay.
I mean, I imagine that I'm coming back to the door about the time that they're all walking out. Where are you going?
We're going to kill the kobolds.
we're going to resume our contract.
Are we ignoring the fact that there's some sort of draconic abomination that we have no knowledge about?
We have knowledge of it. I mean, we saw it, and I showed it to everybody. And yeah, it's probably a bad idea.
I'm not saying we go hunt that thing now, but we're not going to find any more information about it in the tavern.
What kind of men are you?
Manly men.
He's a half elf. He's a dwarf.
She kind of like jams a finger up at Sven. Isn't that why he's here? To kill that thing?
Are you implying that I'm some sort of relation to that thing? That's a beast. A mere construct at best. No, I'm a dragonkind. Not a dragon.
But if it's a beast, then it needs killing.
So, all right, let's get one thing straight. I think I speak for us all when I say that we respect how you've been taking the fight to the kobolds. But we're from the guild in Messidore. There are rules, right? So we're happy to have you with us as our deputy in this matter. And as I'm speaking, I like kind of narrow my eyes at different members of the party in turn when I make eye contact with them, and then continue. But we've got to call the shots.
Yes, you're the adults.
So we'll let you know when it's time to kill more kobolds. That's the deal, all right? Otherwise, you can give me my bow back and go home.
Okay.
All right, it's a deal. So, Braynoon, what's the next move?
Well, last night we discussed going and speaking with Lensa to see what information she had before we
Lens is a
set
bitch.
off to. I'm just, the opening and closing of a hand. Ava, we are here to do a job, and to do that job, we need as much information as possible. And Elwar had a little. You've revealed quite a bit, and my hope is that Lensa is able to fill in some gaps. I understand that you're not on the best of terms with her, and you're welcome to wait here for us. But we're gonna go talk to her.
What more information do you need? I know where they are.
Okay. Do you know what tactics they're using? Do you know the times that they set out? Do you know when they sleep? Do you know how many of them there are?
Are they in control of this mysterious dragon monster, or is it just along for the ride?
You think Lensa's gonna know this? They come out at night. They stab things.
We're calling the shots, remember?
I warned you. She doesn't fucking know anything.
Well, then, you can tell us that you told us so after we go talk to her.
I will.
So
Keep
to
talking. So, I'm using the property map that you got a little bit more information on previously, trying to find the homestead of Lensa.
I believe that is our first destination, yes.
All right. Let me, for accuracy's sake, That's not what I meant to do. Hopefully nobody saw that. Everyone should be blind currently, correct?
That is
Yes.
correct for me.
All right, let me go ahead and do that. And let me give you-
While we're on our way there, I'm
Yes.
going to hand Quinn the map. See if you can get her to give any generic locations.
All right. So
So
as- Yep.
I'm gonna do my best to just speak to her like an asset, in the field,
Mhm.
and just ignore her age or situation. I've probably done it before. And try to get her to point out things that she has scouted, like bringing asks.
Go ahead, give me another persuasion check real quick.
That's going to be an 18, I think. Let me confirm. Yeah, no, it's a 20. Dirty
Oh,
20.
Okay. I'll give you the option. Do you want the information that Ava gives you, or do you want the dialogue that Ava gives you?
Just the information.
Okay. The long and the short of it is, previously, before the roaming glade agreement was kind of set in stone, and the town was both on the northern and the southern side of the creek, she used to, I guess, like play or explore or interact with a nomadic elf boy that she was friends with for quite some time, and they would kind of like go up in the mountains and explore fairly regularly. Since the agreement, she's kind of lost contact with this individual, so that's been 10-ish, 15-ish years. But she indicates or suggests, I suppose, that one of the caves they used to like go and kind of like play house in and, just kind of chill in as children, well, I guess she is still technically a child, is the loose place that she thinks these kobolds are coming from, as she has tracked them several times over the stream and kind of up into the mountains. It's about perhaps like a day and a half westward. And that's generally what her process has been, is she crosses over the creek, tries to find isolated clusters of the kobolds, and then basically just harasses them and tracks them until she can find one alone and does what she does. But I guess that would be the majority of the information she has to offer up.
Okay.
Well, anything else before you arrive at the homestead?
Not other than just making sure that the rest of the group also hears that information or gets it.
So, finding this place is incredibly difficult, both because you've given rough directions and there's a road basically leading directly to it. As you were actually stepping into the clearing that holds this home, there is this small, kind of modest thatch roof house or abode kind of off to the north, which is, looks relatively well kept. It has like nice bushes with like flowers and whatnot kind of growing around the foundation. Just south of it is a rather large barn that seems to be probably a bit more recently constructed. There's an actual like pen to the south of it that is somewhat abundant with cattle. There's maybe like 5, 6 heads of cattle back there, and then there's clearly more noises coming from the barn itself. Off to the west of both of the structures, there's these kind of large flowing cornfields that kind of go almost to the next hill, kind of reaching the base where it starts to elevate, and then past that you start getting into the rolling foothills that then lead to the mountains kind of off on the horizon. So it's a somewhat peaceful situation to stride into, except as you get a little bit closer and try to look out for the piece of information that was given to you previously, you would spot on the far western side of the fields there are a few fence posts that stand a little bit taller than the rest, kind of on the corner of each lot, where what you could assume to be previously kobold corpses have been skinned and strung up and kind of strapped to the posts of wood. Their hides have kind of been stripped and then laced around the fence that kind of goes across the adjoining pieces. It's not exactly a inviting sight, but at least you're on the right side of it, I suppose. But that would be, I guess, a scene that you approach on.
As we approach, I'm gonna kind of where we're at. I'm gonna stop the group and look at Ava. Are you going to be able to remain civil during this conversation?
I'm not going in there. I'll wait here.
I have no argument with that. And I will walk towards the house.
Mhm.
I'm also going to keep an eye out just to see if, given what time of day it is, that if there's anything, if she might be working in the barn or, just not assuming she's in the house. But
well, I imagine it's pretty early in the morning still. It probably took you like less than an hour to actually get out here. I guess the only indication that you would have about like where she might be is there is smoke coming out of the chimney in the house, and it's probably a good sign that she's probably in there.
okay, yeah, I will. I'm gonna walk up to the door and not aggressively, but just knock. I assume the door's right about there.
So as you are approaching, it's not subtle. It's pretty clear. You begin to hear movement like inside the structure as you get closer. It's very much the sound of like a very tentative footstep and then the kind of correlating groan of the floorboards beneath it. And you can tell as you're stepping up onto the porch that there's an individual, perhaps like just on the other side of the wall from you. And as you finally knock, there is a moment of silence, perhaps like maybe a second or two before the door would open. Let me actually, did that work? That does work. And I'll go ahead and do this so you all can see her lovely mug.
Did we go with Brandon?
I imagine you could have.
Yeah. Okay. You want us to move our tokens?
She looks awesome.
Wow. That's horrible.
So as the door opens, it only opens perhaps like halfway, as it's clearly being like opened with a little bit of caution. And the first thing you spot are these two kind of brilliant and terrifying blue eyes. They are like so intensely blue that it makes you almost like on the back foot for a moment as you feel like you've seen something that doesn't quite compute. But then the actual state of her face kind of, I don't want to say softens your nerves, but draws more of your attention. Her features are covered in really dark and deep bruises. There is also clearly like wounds that have been scraped open or is now kind of beginning to scab. Her eyes are clearly like bruised and blackened. She's not in a great state. There's also clearly like her face is pretty grimy and grungy, but there's a, I don't want to say, suspiciously clean section beneath her eyes, which you could perhaps assume is due to a flowing of tears. She has this kind of like grim, flat expression, like not really angry or relieved or recognizing who you are quite yet. She does almost like make it a point that she has a dagger kind of clutched in her right hand that's like up by her chest as she opens the door, and she just like quickly flicks her eyes up and down to you. It's like, what do you want?
Madam Veris, I apologize for interrupting your morning. My name is Brinoon. These are my companions. We've been hired by the village to deal with the Kobold Menace. We're part of the Emberbore Guild out of Messidore. I was hoping I might be able to have a short conversation with you to see if there's any information you might be able to share with us about the beasts.
As you mention your purpose here, you see this like somewhat, I'm gonna say creepy smile kind of spread across her face. It's just this like, you're here to kill the kobolds. Oh, what great news. Oh, what great news. Come in, come in. And she begins opening the door. The actual interior of the building is somewhat inviting. It is that kind of general, comfy, cozy kind of farmstead aesthetic, but the first thing that you kind of spot that's somewhat out of the norm is the table is clearly set for 3 people and set for a meal that was what looked to be kind of halfway dealt with, and the food that was there previously has now been left to kind of rot and linger. The actual, I guess, like pot that had held the majority of it, kind of festering with different mold that doesn't look too appetizing. But she would kind of like step back and gesture into the building, kind of, I guess, signaling for you all to take a seat.
I'm not getting any sort of menace towards us from her, right? Like it was just
No.
okay. I will walk in and take a seat if she's motioning towards a place. Otherwise, I'll just kind of stand inside enough to where my companions can come in if they wish.
Yeah, she would keep waving to, I guess, try and get you all inside.
I also left my warhammer outside, leaning against the wall. So
Okay.
just
So
to say,
you
hey,
all
I'm not
kind
gonna
of-
bring my primary weapon in.
Yeah. As you all step inside and get, again, it is a nice home. It's fairly pleasant, except for this kind of strange underlying eeriness as she kind of tucks herself beside the fireplace, her back up against the wall, with just this ever-present smile still on her face, and she kind of like takes stock of you one at a time, and she would eventually kind of rest her eyes on Sven. There's a hint of skepticism, I suppose, where she kind of like shakes herself out of the thought and then turns her attention back to Brandon, kind of assuming he's the introductory face of the party, I suppose. Like, I could make you some food if you'd like, but I'd rather discuss business. Your arrival is very fortunate.
Yeah. No need for food. Let's we were hoping you might be able to share any information you have on, not wishing to bring up horrible memories, but the attack that happened here and anything you might have noticed in the days leading to or since that might help us in our dealing with these creatures.
The little cretins, they come out at night. I see them stalking through the corn and rustling. You can always hear the rustling first. And then there was a night that we heard them outside. My husband went outside to check on them, and that didn't go well. But now I've warded them off. I can show you how to. I've gotten very peculiar. I can skin them very well. If you'd like me to show. But the first day they wrestle, and then you can hear their scratchy voices screeching, how they communicate. And then there's the big one. It's trampled some of my crops. I can show you the footprints if you'd like. But I've been building a plan that you all would be perfect for.
I'd be very interested in seeing those tracks. I mean, how many have you seen? Like how large of a group are they typically traveling in? And yeah, like again, anything about how they behave is great.
Well, I've seen them. They're no more than 5, I think, at a time. But the noises they make, I don't know how many there are. But I think it's probably easy to assume that there's more than I've seen. But they seem to come out in bigger numbers when the larger one is out. They kind of what do you call it? Like a bee to a hive. They follow it around. You can see they scurry on the bigger tracks of the bigger one. You can see the smaller footprints.
Have you personally seen the larger one?
Only at night. With never a good moon. It's always dark. It's very dark, and it's hard to discern between the trees and the what it is. But I've seen it. Yes.
And it's never directly attacked. It seems to rely on the kobolds themselves for that.
It bellows, or it roars. I don't know. I'm not a learned woman. I don't know the big words. But I think it signals them. I think there's something there. But the small ones, they come out and they're obsessed with cattle or pigs. They took my pigs. So that's part of my plan. I've been if we can lure them in with the cattle, we could trap them in the barn. And I thought we could light them on fire.
But that would burn down your barn, though.
Oh, that's fine.
Well, I mean, it's your barn.
I know that Elwa, he's stingy. He's not paying you nearly enough. I have 2 horses. I could give you if you would like.
I kind of look around at the group. We were actually planning to head out today to see if we could find them in their den. However, depending on how that goes, your plan does sound like could be sound. In the few days since the attack here, have they? I know you said you set up your wards. Have they made any attempt, or have they avoided?
Oh, yeah. Yes, they have.
Okay.
But why go face them in their territory when we can bring them here?
I agree with her. I mean, this seems like a lot better place to go than inside of another dark cave series of tunnels. I'm tired of tunnels and caves and being in the dark. I mean, I don't mind the dark, but when there's things in there that want to kill me, I like her idea.
I'm not saying that thinning their numbers is a bad idea potentially, but we're going to have to go in the caves anyway. We have to confirm that the job is done.
Then go to the caves once you've killed them out here, and then your job is much easier.
She's really smart. I know smart people, and she sounds really smart.
Do you need more money? I can make more money.
Yes. I mean, how much are we talking here?
I didn't pitch into that whatever fucking Elwa was gonna pay you, because I knew that you all would come here because you're destined. So I have a few things stored away that I could offer.
If I may ask, I mean, you're talking about burning down your barn, potentially losing all your animals as well. What is your plan once the kobolds have been dealt with?
Oh, I'm done here. This is yeah. I'm done here.
Well, it sounds like you might need all the funds you have at that point. So, however, if you'll give us a moment, we'll discuss this as a group outside and be back with you in a few minutes.
I didn't get the tiefling. What is your name? You seem very nice.
My name's Thomas, and thank you. I try to be nice.
It's great to meet you, Thomas. She kind of like scurries over and would like grasp both your hands in her own, and you can. Her hands are disgusting, and there is clearly like mud and ichor and potentially even like blood kind of jammed under her fingernails, which have not been trimmed in quite some time. And she grasps your hand like, I hope that you are a voice of reason. It seems that potentially my demeanor is potentially turning you all off, but my plan is
No.
good. My plan is good.
You've been through a lot, and it's really understandable. And as he's talking to her and just kind of saying soothing things to her, he'll intersperse that with a little prestidigitation to her hand
Mhm.
here, a little prestidigitation to her other hand there. I hope I'm not being too forward here, but it looks like, with all the things you've been doing, you haven't had time to take care of, that dirt under your nails. Here, let me get that for you. And
Well, yeah,
can,
my
can,
shovel broke when I was building the traps, and so I started
I,
using my hands.
I know it, and that'll scratch them. You have to watch out for that. And we can maybe fix your shovel for you, and then do you mind? And he'll reach up and clean all that crap off of her face.
I mean, to be clear, a lot of it is like bruises and like marks, but
But
there's
the blood, yeah,
yeah.
there, pretty as a picture.
She would almost kind of like flinch as you first like reach out, but as she like is, you can tell is like forcing herself to be more pleasant than she feels like being. Kind of like just suffers through it as you go through the process, and then eventually, yes, yes, very, 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 very clean, very presentable, yes.
And yeah, at home, we always had chores, and I had to clean up after dinner. Let me go ahead and clean up the table for you.
No.
No?
Uh,
Oh, okay.
they
All right,
haven't finished
fine.
eating yet.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sorry. Right. Wouldn't. Yeah. Okay. He'll just step back.
We'll be back in a few moments. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page. And I will move towards the door, and I'm just gonna kind of stop at this over here by the well,
Mhm.
assuming that the group is following
Yeah.
me.
I would assume so.
And as we gather, well, we have 2 wild cards now. What's everyone's thoughts?
I don't have any confidence in a plan that she comes up with. She's, I don't want to say crazy, but
Well, I mean, sometimes the craziest people have the best plans. Really, look around you. She's quite effective. I mean, really, she is. She's off a rocker, but I don't know why she's skinning them or keeping the food, but I mean, she's clearly good at what she's doing, and she has wards set up, and it's. I remember in tactics class that they said if you can ward the battlefield before you start, that that can lead an advantage, and also it sometimes gives a percentage of victory in excess of 20% higher than you'd normally have. Right, I remember hearing the same thing, and
I assume that Ava's token moving over is her approaching.
Yeah. Ava would shrill up as you all are continuing your conversation.
I kind of hush because I just assume she's gonna have some comment to make, but I will look up at her, kind of eyebrows raised.
Can I say I told you so yet?
No, you can't. Seems that Lensa has a plan to trap and exterminate a number of the creatures.
And?
We're
the two,
discussing the merits.
yes, and the two of you combined, I mean, you're obviously good on your own at taking care of these creatures, so the two of you together would be fairly additive. And then when you add the four of us together, it'd probably be pretty good. It's in our interest, I think, to work together with her, even though you don't like her that much, which I understand because she's a little crazy, but that might be because her family died.
What is the crazy bitch's plan?
She has the field warded, and as for the rest, I don't know. Brandon?
There's just kind of a look of slight shock, considering how for the plan Thomas was inside the house. She intends to use her cattle as a lure to get as many of them into the barn as possible, trap them inside, light the building on fire.
I'm all for it.
That's what
Yes.
I'm afraid of.
I mean, I hear the screaming of kobolds dying in fire is quite therapeutic.
Also, it would seem that she, well, she hasn't clearly seen the beast that travels with them. There's evidence of it in the area that perhaps we can use to learn a little bit more of him. And I kind of look at the group. This would mean that we're here for the rest of the day waiting for a potential attack tonight.
I don't have a better idea. That's as enthusiastic as I can be at the moment.
Maybe we could go to work on setting our own traps around the area.
I could bring Quinn out and we could try and kill the stragglers.
Looking around outside, do I see the broken shovel anywhere?
Not in your relative area, no.
Okay. I wouldn't be opposed to setting up some sort of secondary defense should the first plan fall through and we're left with nothing else. Damn it.
Quinn, you have those spiky things that you put on the ground. You call them cat traps?
Caltrops, and I did pick up some more before we left.
Oh, I bet that would really make the kobolds scream with pain.
They'll be screaming about something.
So, as you all are continuing to discuss, Lensa doesn't approach, but he does step out onto her porch, kind of just like daintily resting her hands on the banister and just like constantly fidgeting as she's watching you all. And it's easy to assume that you're more or less in earshot.
Sven would like to go over and offer her some incense to share with.
I hate how accurate that is.
Give me persuasion with disadvantage.
He rolls a 16.
Is that with his bonus? You're really using your portent on fucking drugs.
He rolls a 17.
Oh lord. Yeah, as Sven approaches, she kind of shifts her eyes over to him as he gets closer. Uh, are you an expert on kobolds? You seem similar.
I'll pretend I didn't hear that. No, I'm a dragonkind. You've heard of us, right?
Yes, but I mean, you can't
I
deny
mean-
the
Yes, perhaps many eons ago there was a common ancestry, but we're quite more advanced than they are at this point. So advanced, in fact, that we've come up with many ways to deal with stress. And you look amazingly stressed, and I would like to share some incense with you.
well, what have you all agreed on
Yes, we're going to take care of it. We're going to burn the little buggers alive in the barn and have a little barbecue.
Then I suppose that that calls for a little celebration. I suppose, yes.
Absolutely.
Why don't you uh come sit down inside? Yes. And I'll yeah, let's go inside.
All right.
Jesus.
This is where she kills Sven. Uh, so just kind of watching that happen. I'm gonna plans for how we spend the rest of the day.
Say that again.
Plans for how we spend the rest of the day.
We should prepare the battlefield. And
That's right.
and see if there's anything we can learn from the kobold corpses that are here. I'll start studying them.
Well, since I'm a deputy, what do I do?
Well, you had mentioned perhaps you and Quen scout in the immediate area.
Mm-hmm.
Quen,
Let's
do
get
you have
to it.
any? Perfect. As everyone kind of heads out, I'm gonna head back to the house, poke my head in, and just, Lensa, where might I find that shovel and the tracks you mentioned?
So as you are getting back
Looking
up,
in on whatever scene
yeah,
I'm seeing.
as you're getting back up to the porch, you hear this like. I know that did not come across on my Discord, but it will be in the recording if you are interested. And as you actually open the door, there the most shocking scene. Oh Jesus, my legs keep hitting my desk. The most shocking scene that you could see kind of is laid out before you as you see. She's kind of like reached out and grabbed Sven's like forearm, and she's like leaning back in the very beginnings of like a genuine laughter. She's like, ah, yes, yes. As Sven is very excitedly nodding along with her. Um,
Exactly what I said. Oh, there he is. Speak of the devil. Hello, Braynon.
Pardon the interruption. And I'll just repeat my question to Lensa.
oh, the shovel, I left it out in the field if you wanted. Be careful of the holes.
Will do. And I'm gonna go see if I can find the shovel.
Alright. Go throw me an investigation, and then Quinn, or what is your process with scouting with Ava?
So I want to go in the. I want to focus on the fence line and look for tracks, look for previous damage that the kobolds may have done, or tracks that they may have left. And while we're at it, so if I can identify like a path that maybe they are likely to use again, and while we're at it, any beneficial terrain.
Okay. Give me survival, investigation, and perception.
All right, survival is a dirty 20.
Okay.
Perception is a 9.
Okay.
And investigation is an 8.
Okay. As you move to like the far western side of the property and you're moving like up and down kind of the edge of where their crops stop, you are gifted the very vivid sight of the corpses that you kind of spotted earlier and the state that they have been left in. But moving a little bit farther away, you begin to, I guess, find the signs of foot traffic, I guess is the right term for it. And it is, Robbie, your mic. It is not difficult to spot the rather larger imprints that, even if these footprints are multiple days old, which is very likely they are, um, have been left kind of clear to find, is that depressed earth is not going to be moving anytime soon. It is, trying to justify what description you get with all the mixtures of roles that you got. The one bit of information that I guess is somewhat applicable or interesting to you is following the larger traffic or the larger beast's path. You can almost see a strange pattern in how these smaller footsteps kind of break away and come back, almost in this like strange kind of like constantly swirling and combining pathway that probably spreads about maybe 30 or 50 feet at its widest. And it, I guess, kind of indicates that as this thing moves, there's like smaller kobold parties or pings or scouts kind of like coming off of it and returning. But I guess overall, this wouldn't be too hard to discern. It appears that they avoid the like open areas the most. There's like a bit of woodlands and then somewhat of a open barrier of like grassland and then the actual crops themselves. And it looks like the majority of traffic and like the heaviest density of it is either right on the edge of the woods or in the crops themselves with like very direct paths kind of shooting across. So if anything, that like area between the forest and the crops is kind of a easy spot to kind of identify traffic, and then once they get into the crops, it's a lot more difficult to figure out what path they're taking.
And I guess did she come up with anything more than I did?
Yeah, as Ava's like tagging along, she would, I guess, like periodically kind of like, I guess, try and ask what is currently on your mind or what you're thinking about or what you're investigating. She does grow probably a bit more quiet or silent as you approach the corpses that I think is somewhat clear to the party now were the ones that led to the death of her father and now are being strung up as, warnings of some sort. But as you move away from that and kind of continue investigation, as she's like moving past the obvious turmoil going on there. She would, I guess, probably make it known that she's never seen them over the creek during the day, but there is the rare time that she's seen them patrolling the creek during the day in smaller numbers, which I guess is potentially something you might want to know.
I guess that's all for now. I'll reel it in and relay what we noticed.
Okay. And Brainerd, you were looking for the broken shovel, sir?
Yep, I got a 17 on investigation to find a broken shovel.
So as you go off of the excellent directions given to you by the the peer pressured individual, as you stroll through the cornfields, it's not difficult to see what led to the broken shovel, as I guess the space between the rows, whatever is like the actual term for that is, like the footpaths that you would move through. Periodically, there are perhaps like 3 or 4 feet long, 3 or 4 feet deep holes dug in the ground, and there appear to be trowels and broken tools and bits of metal just kind of jammed in the bottom of them in no real particular manner. And there's perhaps maybe like 10 or 15 of them that you spot as you're patrolling. Eventually, as you're kind of getting farther and farther away from the homestead, you would spot that the shovel's kind of jammed in the earth, and maybe like 3 or 4 inches above where it connects to the handle, it's been snapped off. The handle just kind of left there where you could assume it had been broken previously.
Okay. I'm gonna collect the 2 pieces, pull a couple of lodestones out of my bag, and cast mending to fix said shovel, which only takes a minute. And then I want to head back to the buildings and kind of and I'll mostly be waiting for Quinlan to come back, but kind of start putting together the plan for this evening. Like,
Mhm.
if they come from this direction, we can funnel them in this way. But
Feel free as well to, I guess, like explore the map or show the map. I'll
Mhm.
go ahead and open
Yeah,
those doors.
I planned to kind of go into the barn and
Yeah,
see.
so you can go ahead and reveal that at your leisure.
Mm-hmm.
And was I able to discern anything about the kobolds from looking at the corpses? Anything that would
Well,
set them apart or
yeah, I mean, I
identify
guess
them as a
just
group?
that the. What are you more specifically trying to learn? Like traits about them, or these kobolds specifically, or what?
Anything that, having read the bestiary, he
Mhm.
understands what a kobold is,
Mhm.
but is there anything that, that maybe they were wearing or how they're marked or anything that would make them stand out? Just
Go ahead and give me a medicine check and a history check.
all right. Medicine is a 6, and history is a natural 20 for a 27.
All right. You guys are giving me some weird combinations today. Uh, I imagine, Thomas, you are not abundantly familiar with both kobold anatomy and the process of which you might dissect and skin one. So trying to figure out literally head or tails from the corpses and wrappings that have been made out of these individuals, there's not a lot of, I guess, knowledge or wealth to be gained in that pursuit. But as you're more or less kind of left to your own devices, Sparkle's kind of making it very clear that he is interested in the rotting flesh that has been exposed to the sun for multiple days. You begin to dig back through that brilliant mind of yours, all the different lessons and books and bits of knowledge that you've kind of picked and stuck in there like a fly on flypaper. That's a totally great analogy. You do remember a somewhat applicable bit of knowledge that kobolds are very much servants. They are creatures that kind of don't function without some sort of central leadership or purpose. They usually find themselves as the underlings or the grunts for more impressive and powerful beings. And so the general, I guess, situation that you guys have been slowly uncovering seems to make relative sense. This larger creature kind of being the center of these kobolds' focus and lives. The kobolds themselves appear to be different colorations. And this could mean a bunch of different things, but going off of the different knowledge, bits of knowledge that you've kind of collected, kobolds kind of naturally, I guess, evolve or change or adapt to whatever larger creature or environment they are, I guess, like entrenched in. So if one was to serve a golden dragon of some sort for a lengthy period of time, they would begin to reflect different characteristics of that, I guess, patron the longer they serve it. These seem to be mostly reddish in color, almost across the board, but with larger splats of black on their hides and different, I guess, pointers towards that transformation or adaptation. So through Thomas's expert Sherlock Holmes investigation, I imagine you could piece together that these kobolds have either switched their focuses somewhat recently or are in the process of kind of adapting themselves to their new leadership.
so does the black look newer than the red?
I don't know if I can give you that. That's a little bit of a, like, I don't know if that's even like possible to tell.
Okay. I would um I would definitely relay that to the rest of the group and kind of point out that if that's any indication of what types of dragon-ish being we're dealing with,
Mhm.
that could be relevant.
I imagine after her relaxation dust, Lensa would offer up to take a nap, which seems to be the first potential rest she's gotten in quite some time, as Sven would come out victorious in his putting down of the strained woman for at least a small bit of time.
Quite right.
So I imagine the whole group would kind of consolidate all the information they've gathered and regroup.
Mm-hmm. So going through that, the most likely direction for them to come through is probably the fields, or is it from kind of behind the barn type of thing?
So generally, where the actual like farm rests, the creek that is kind of the border of this, I guess, interaction, kind of
Mhm.
starts on the west and kind of snakes around the property down to the south. But for whatever reason, it seems like the majority of the approaches are from that kind of western curve. Down in the south, I imagine probably Quinn and Ava would offer this information up in some extent. There's less traffic there. Clearly, they have gone there and explored there, but their actual crossing point seems to be higher up the stream, and then their actual approach to the farm seems to be mostly from the west.
Okay. So just kind of voicing out to everybody what the as best as we can plan is with the information we have is they'll come in from the west. Having looked at the barn, my thought is, we keep, looks like there's, 2 large doors. We keep those open, lights in the barn to draw attention to it. During my walk around, have the animals been tended to? Is there signs that they've been fed recently? Were they, when they saw me coming up, was there an anticipation of feeding?
I think it's probably a fairly easy observation to make that the various duties of the farm have been somewhat neglected recently.
Okay.
So yeah, they probably would look at you as some sort of like, hey, you're the food guy.
Yep. So I didn't feed them, and my thought is to, because having grown up on a farm, unfed animals tend to be pretty noisy about all that. Continue to not feed them, bring them all into the barn tonight so that they are hopefully creating as much ruckus as possible, again, drawing attention to them. The reason I repaired the shovel is I would like to, as much as I can in the time we have, dig a very shallow trench kind of from the back corner of the house across the little, it's not a road, but drive or whatever. And if possible, using my companion's help, gather up as much already fallen, relatively decent sized lumber to create some sort of bike barricade sort of thing that we can be behind as a pseudo if they charge, there's something in their way. Nothing fancy, not just very quickly thrown together. I'm talking enough. Trench isn't the right word. I want to loosen up the ground. I don't want to actually dig a hole, but I just want to make it so that we can stick some wood into it. And
so to make it clear, you're talking about this relative area?
More the back corner of the house to right in front of the well to where that fallen tree is.
Okay, so there?
Continuing along, yeah, kinda.
Like that.
I suppose I could draw it.
Yeah, but just trying to get a general idea.
Something kind of like that.
Okay, gotcha.
Sven and Thomas would, using the floating disc, would go through the woods and pick up anything that resembled what Braynoon was looking for.
I'll probably say it's around noon when you guys all kind of gather back together to discuss a plan. So that gives you, the maybe 5-6 hours before, evening kind of sets in. So is this the plan that you all want to agree upon to move forward on? Okay.
I'm good with it.
All right.
Because if it's cobalt, it's not like it needs to be a 6-foot high barricade. Just enough more to be an annoyance and and make them not want to go that way.
Yeah, I'm trying to conceptualize how far you all would actually get. And there are 4 of you. And there is Ava, who is an impressive specimen. Um.
I mean, we also have to put together the plan of how we're going to set the barn on fire,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. But
Just for my sake, everyone go ahead and throw me an athletics.
that is a 15 for Braynoon.
I 21.
7 for Sven and a 4 for Thomas.
Yep. That sounds about right. Okay. So, I will certainly say by the time that like the sun begins to dip and afternoon and evening begin to kind of blend together, you all have spent a fair amount of the day, and thankfully the well is nearby as to keep you rather hydrated as the steady work continues. You do get, I guess, at least a trench across, and then again, nothing incredibly sturdy, but at least like an actual barrier or presentation of a defense from the 2 points you kind of indicated, giving you a fairly good view of both the side of the house and the barn, and then a little bit of beyond off into the fields. It, again, certainly wouldn't stop a few opponents kind of trying to force their way through, but it is something to actually like plant a barrier there.
Yeah.
And
The idea of
one thing I'd like to do too is take 10 minutes during a break and cast Detect Magic. And just, I'd like to wander for the duration of that spell. I'd like to walk through the barn, go in and check on Lensa. If she's still asleep, just kind of poke my head around the house, see if there's anything.
Okay. What is the barrier for detect magic? It's like 3 foot of wood or 1 foot of stone.
Penetrate most
Something like
barriers, but it's blocked by 1 foot of stone, 1 inch of common metal, a thin sheet of lead, or 3 feet of wood or dirt.
Dude, I remembered that at the top of my head. I'm impressed with myself. As you are like wandering, she's like laying down in her bed, taking her nap still, even as like evening's kind of rolling about. As you poke your head around the corner to kind of look in the vague bedroom area of the structure, there is the essence of some sort of magical energy coming out from beneath the floorboard that's kind of like partially under the bed.
I would leave it alone.
Okay.
Go back out to the group.
yeah. While we're working, I'd probably be quizzing Quinlan more often than not on how to effectively burn this building as quick as possible. In my walking around, I did notice there's a ladder in the bottom of the barn. Is that a ladder to another level, or is it
There's a loft
just
on the
a ladder
western
to
side
okay.
of the barn that has like, hay and stuff up on it, which,
Mhm.
is somewhat useful, I suppose.
Right. But just, where we might be able to set points that we could alight, or a way to chain things together so that, hey, we light here and it continues using the hay. And I'm assuming there's probably some lamp oil around here somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Just since she doesn't seem to be concerned with preserving anything, just anything we can use that
Sven
will
would,
help us in this.
Sven would remind you that, I mean, you can do it the hard way if you want, but... And he shoots a firebolt off to the distance into the dirt.
Well, one of the ways to make sure it goes up fastest is to light it in all 4 corners.
I don't think we've discussed it yet, but are we trying to get the big one in there? I've been curious.
Doesn't seem like the big one
Gets close. I suspect the big one uses the kobolds to collect things and bring it back. So potentially after the building's inflamed, it might approach, but I don't see it going inside a barn itself. And looking at the door and looking at the images, I'm also not sure it would fit in the barn.
I'd consider it a success if we can just isolate it. If the only thing left is it after the kobolds hopefully fall into the trap.
Ava kind of clearly shows her, I don't want to say like obsession, but her focus on this, as you all are kind of speaking, almost holding her tongue, but, you know, Ava pipes up. What if it had like a target that it thought it was, that it could get, instead of the cattle, like a, one of us?
No, he doesn't. She doesn't mean you, Mr. Sparkles. Okay.
From the weird mental magic illusion from the night before. Jeez, that was just last night. Like, with very little from it, did it seem to be interested, like, in collecting her father's body? Or, I mean, that's another question I had that I didn't ask, is where are the bodies of her father and Lensa's husband? Since they both seemed to die here 3 days ago.
The one thing to mention about the actual, I guess, mind reading is it's not even clear that the dragon was where it was at in that scene. Like, it very much could have just been her image of it superimposed on the scene itself. There's a lot of interpretation there, which we haven't quite, I guess, mentioned yet.
Right, and to be fair, what Thomas was really going for was just to get a representation of what it was, not necessarily the whole picture.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like the only motions you saw it take in that memory were it kind of off in the distance and then trundling further away. I guess it would be somewhat clear, probably mostly to Thomas, but I guess Braynon was also there for the discovery, that the little area between like the south of the barn and the entrance of the house, this like somewhat central area before the fields start, is the actual scene that Ava had kind of come across where her father had died. There are clearly signs of like combat or disturbance there, you know, like the exposed earth where like the gravel's kind of been pushed away and where there was probably some sort of body lingering or had been dragged from, especially the kobold corpses, which there are still scales kind of scattered amongst the gravel. But it has been dealt with, whatever that potentially means. So
that would have been, I mean, that was on our to-do list, but going to look at the tracks and having kind of put that together, I would have probably spent some time in the afternoon, kind of probably during one of our breaks or whatever, as I'm drinking some water, just like recreating that scene, standing where it happened, looking to where it might have been, and then going to investigate that brief location, just because it's
God, this is a weird check.
it's a night of weird checks.
Okay, so it could be history with disadvantage and then an insight check.
So the history with disadvantage is an 11.
Okay.
And the insight is a 16.
Okay. So, Brandon, you don't have that kind of like first-hand knowledge that I assume Thomas has from the actual thing, but his recreation of the illusion and description give you enough to go off of as you're standing relatively where Ava is, and honestly, you're probably the same height as Ava is, or at least close. You're looking across the cornfield, and the one thing you remember Thomas kind of describing and sort of indicating with his illusion is that the creature was kind of like towering over the cornfield to the point where like it was easily noticeable at a fair enough distance, but kind of judging by the tops of the corn and the hill that kind of follow it and then eventually the forest laying beyond that, the size doesn't quite match. Like, it would have to be so tall that it would be absurdly way larger than you would assumed it to be. And so there's just a little bit of like a, this doesn't quite line up. Yeah.
That's the other reason I wanted to take a look at its tracks, because generally I should be able to get a decent idea of its size based on its footprints.
I feel like that's a survival check, potentially, maybe
Sure.
investigation. Don't quite know which one you want to go with.
I don't disagree with survival, and I'm
Okay.
proficient in that. So.
Yeah.
16.
Okay. I think it's probably easy enough to discern, even though the footprints kind of double up on each other as they move.
Mm-hmm.
It does appear to be a six-legged creature, which is something that's strange or unique, but not entirely categorizing of what this thing is.
Right.
I think what I'll give you is you are overall doubtful that the size of the creature that you've been described and shown match the actual physical evidence. I would say it's still in the realm of plausible, but the
Right.
indication of what you're looking at probably puts it a little bit, if not somewhat smaller than what you've been told.
Thinking more like larger than a house rather than larger than a house, or larger than a horse rather than larger than a house.
Yeah,
Type of
and
thing.
you could hit that ballpark if you want.
Okay. In that case, I would revise my previous statement. I would have, during one of our get-togethers, I would have, taken Quinn out to take a look at the tracks or whatever, and just kind of piece that together. And seems to be smaller than a. Yeah, I would say it. Whether she's there or not, smaller than a child's memory during a traumatic event would indicate. So it is possible we could get it into the barn. I don't know how much. I don't think a burning barn would contain it, but that could be part of the plan if we wished to try to do that. But
I
then,
guess the question we have to answer then is it more important to include this thing in the trap if there's a chance it could break the trap, and now we just have a fight with all the kobolds and it with the backdrop of a burning barn?
I mean, that would look cool. That's what we have to decide. That's looking at the barn, knowing that the house seems to be relatively well built. I'm assuming the barn is relatively well built.
Yeah, it's
But
certainly
I'm
not
guessing,
shabby.
like looking at the doors, I'm assuming it's one of those things. If I feel like I could break through the doors, I'm definitely not going to put something that I'm pretty sure is stronger than me and rely on the doors to hold it.
Yeah, I
But-
mean, it's a decent building, but it is a
Right.
building.
It's not a prison.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it does a relatively decent job of containing something, but if something really wanted to get out, it would get out.
On that note, speaking of to-do list things we have to do, is there a way from externally to lock this barn? Or is that
it does
something
have
we
your
need
kind
to...
of, like, traditional, like, open handles that you could, like, slide some
Okay.
sort of thing into or across. The actual, like, lock on the inside is one of those, like, slats that you can slide in,
Right.
but it is inside.
Okay, I just want to make sure, like, hey, we're going to lock this thing in. And then we go, oh, there's
How
no
do we
way to
lock
lock
it?
it from
Yeah.
outside. So, okay. I'd, like, probably just as the sun is coming down, I'd be gathering everybody to kind of, let's run through this, if everything goes exactly to plan, what it's going to look like so people know where to be when. I think we agree that trying to trap this creature in is not in our best interest, so it might just be best to get as many kobolds in. It also seems like it'd be easier to get the kobolds in than the beast anyway, so yeah, I guess it's just where everybody should be when. Assuming they come down, they go into the barn. Probably we need 2 people. At least 2 people. 1 to lock the door, 1 to start the fire. Probably 3 or 4 people to start the fire would be ideal.
Volunteer to lock it up.
With a clear line of sight, Sven can be 120 feet away and cast Firebolt into an area, so...
So are you guys planning on leaving the southern doors locked already, and then locking the northern doors when they get in?
That's my thought.
Okay.
Is that we bring all the animals in, we lock the door that goes out to the pasture, and we just kind of make the front door as inviting as possible, and we'll need to identify a signal for what triggers everything. Which, if Quinlan's the one watching the door, locking the doors, I think he should be the one to make that call. But yeah, there's still a lot of unknowns, but try to make as good of a plan as we can.
So the plan is more or less finalized, and Ava reserves herself from fighting Braynoon on her assertion that her memory is not 100%. She would eventually, as like everything's coming together, probably look to Quinn again as kind of her point of contact. Like, well, if we want them to come in, we should remove their corpses from the fence, right?
That's good thinking.
Oh, I can go do it, but someone coming with me?
I'll come along.
All right. Okay. Start setting off down to the field. So as the evening settles in, the plan perfectly put in place, we will end our session there and pick up on it next time.